Which, well, welcome to the Channel 4 News Pop-Up online debate. As I'm sure you've all been watching all week, we've been out and about, from down in lovely Foy, through Swindon and Middlesbrough, up to Edinburgh. And we've been trying to find out the subjects that our viewers want to talk about, and the one that perhaps they've returned to again and again is the whole issue of the economy, the quality of our lives, how we're managing. And we have been talking to people, your good selves, and many, many other people about just exactly those questions, the famed green shoots of recovery. We've been talking about them endlessly and asking whether you have been seeing them on your doorstep. And I am joined here today by some of the people that we met across the country, but we also want to hear from you too. Get in touch on Twitter using the hashtag C4NewsPopUp, or you can comment on our Google Plus page. So I'm joined by Sinead Hanks from Foy, who's returned to her hometown after living in London. She now runs the Love Foy website, which does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a group of local business owners, artists and photographers who want to shout about how much they love their town. In Swindon, we'll be talking to Wayne Smith, who tweeted Channel 4 News to warn us off visiting his town. But we weren't scared. We came anyway, and we think he was joking, but we want to talk to him about whether things are getting better. And in Middlesbrough, we've got Mick Dawson, who runs MSG Bike Gear. He says small businesses and the North East need more government help. That's something you've heard in a number of the regions. And finally, joining me here, looking like my son, so proud of him, is Matthew Ellis, one of Scotland's up-and-coming comedians who's been performing at the Fringe Festival. We're here today. This is our last tour. So let me just start by asking how things are looking up in your town. I mean, Sinead, you love your town. So are things looking up? Are things that good? Well, Sinead, who wants to shout about her town, we're not letting her because we can't hear her, I'm afraid, but we're going to try and sort that out. So, Wayne, you weren't that thrilled about Swindon. It certainly didn't seem that way. Why not? What's wrong? What's going wrong in Swindon?
It just seems really down on its luck. It feels unloved. The town centre is just, it's like a ghost town really. There's so many shops that have closed down over the past few years, and the local government, the local council, I don't think are doing anywhere near enough to try and get the local economy moving.
But, I mean, do you blame the local council, or do you blame, you know, the recession and everything that's happened since then?
It is definitely the recession's fault, but at the end of the day, that's what councils and governments are there for. They have to respond to problems with the economy, such as recessions, and it's up to them to, you know, try and sort of rejuvenate things and get things moving again. And it just doesn't seem to be happening in Swindon. I've not seen any sign of it.
And what has that meant for how you feel about going about your daily life?
Well, nothing's changed. You know, there's a lot of talk that we're at the beginning of a recovery, but it doesn't feel like it. You know, it feels exactly the same today as it did this time last year. Nothing feels different. I think this talk of the recovery is a Westminster story. People are not feeling it. You know, wages are stagnant or non-existent. People are having to, you know, take less hours in work where they can get it just to keep a job. You know, and nobody feels wealthy. Nobody's got spare money. You know, you're basically just looking for bargains all the time just to try and survive.
I mean, Mick Dawson in Middlesbrough, you know, it's a pretty bleak picture that Wayne paints. What's your assessment of your town?
I think it's a difficult area, the northeast of England. It's one of those places that everybody understands that it's probably at the bottom of the pile when it comes to wages. What I've seen, as far as our business is concerned, that a lot of motorcycle businesses, especially in the northeast, have disappeared. And maybe classed as fortunate that some of our income comes from, or most of our income comes from the internet. But what we're trying to do is push for the northeast of England for more members of the public and motorcyclists obviously coming to our shop directly. It is a difficult situation, but for us, I've noticed that people do spend or still spend money for things like their hobbies. So it's something that you always will continue to do. But what I find as a business, which is extremely difficult, is to find that we're not being supported by the banks. Our bank particularly has no interest at all in what we do, as long as we keep our business in the black. They won't lend me money, so there isn't any support there for me. It's taken me 10 years to get my business to this level, and I can often find that I should be looking at other banks or looking for Mr. Cameron to assist small businesses, and that then will fall down over to employment. We've taken on employment from people from Connections, which are careers advisors. We've got a games manager when they went into liquidation. So we've been fortunate to be able to employ staff with high qualifications, but this isn't a high qualification job that they're doing. So yes, better for my business in that way, but not for the economy. And therefore, if I had more support, then I would think that that would mean I would take on more staff, and subsequently would help the area that I'm in, especially, increase or decrease the amount of people unemployed.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because the government talk an awful lot about how small businesses, the private sector, have to be the engine of growth, as they're fond of saying.
It's not cascading down to me. I haven't felt at all that I've been approached by any bank. I did approach my bank. I've approached my bank quite a few times, to the point where I've not received a reply. We have obviously decided to move to another bank who do have a business advisor, but obviously that is time that we'll take to do that.
Sinead, I hope you can hear me now in
Hi.
Foy. I mean, you were one of the people who did feel that these pesky green shoots, you could see them, or you had hints of them where you are.
Well, it has been reported amongst some of our members, but I completely echo the sentiments that the banks have not in any way near supported small businesses as much as they should. I also feel there's empty properties on the streets in Cornwall that the councils, echoing Wayne's sentiments, really should be forcing their owners to put into use. Our local fish and chip shop recently had to close due to high rents, due to not enough support from businesses, and it's been standing empty now for 9 months. I'd like to see local authorities put more effort into getting these properties back into use. Having said that, we've had extremely good summer here in Foy, and obviously tourism is so weather dependent that some of our members have felt that there have been very tentatively green shoots of recovery, in particular the area of social enterprise. Social enterprise and social entrepreneurs is a massively growing area in Cornwall and in South West in general. So I think that is really an area that is increasing quite rapidly.
I mean, Cornwall's quite an interesting area, isn't it? Because when you saw the programme from Foy, it's absolutely and utterly stunning, the backdrop. But there are an awful lot of areas of poverty, aren't there, and deprivation, and some of the small...
Yeah, I mean, Cornwall's the poorest county in the UK. It has the lowest wages. It has some of the highest utility bills. I mean, you see the picture postcard places like Foy, but in inner Cornwall, Bodmin, Redruth, Camborne are the poorest wards in the whole of the UK. So it's quite a polarised place to live. And but I think people often, when they see David Cameron on holiday and someone like Rock, which has hugely expensive house prices, that's not really the Cornwall that most people know.
I mean, Matthew, Edinburgh's got a similar feel about it at the moment. The festival at the moment, absolutely alive and buzzing. Do you feel that, for you, for your family, standard of living is improving a bit? Is it less tough than it's been, or not?
It kind of changes, because this is the kind of, what you do in comedy, this is the kind of main earner for me this month, whereas, especially in Edinburgh, kind of comedy goes downhill. But then my family coming from Aberdeen, a lot of them work in the oil business, so it's always consistently got money. So yeah, coming from two kind of cities that are quite well off, especially Aberdeen, even though they have areas of poverty, still seem to do quite well for ways of life, especially the arts in Edinburgh, and then in the North City and Ireland.
I mean, a good deal has talked about how young people are faring through this recession. Now, you say that you're managing to make a living out of comedy,
Yes, yeah.
which is a triumph.
Yes.
Well done. But there's a nervousness, isn't there, among you, or is there, among other friends of yours about the future, or would you say that's not true? Or is there optimism?
With the art, it's very difficult. People are kind of now going, do I want to focus on doing art, or do I go to another job where there's more kind of consistency to it, more safety? Yet most young people, I know people are still working in bars, still working in shops. People are still, I just finished university 2 years ago, so people are still managing to get jobs afterwards. So most people I kind of know are doing quite well. A few friends who are unfortunately on the dole.
What's life like for them? What did they say about that?
Last year I signed on for 6 weeks, and it wasn't enough to get by on. So that kind of, with doing acting as well, again, jobs are not consistent. But that made me more driven to kind of pursue comedy, even though it's very risky, especially in a recession. Trying to earn money in a very already risky profession is proving tough, but perseverance. Yeah.
And your, albeit brief experience of life on the dole or job seekers allowances as it is now, what was that like?
It was only 6 weeks, but I think just with the little amount of money it was, they only gave me a kind of small amount of time because I wanted to be acting. They said, you can't put this as your main job. If you don't find any acting work in 6 weeks, then you're going to start applying for proper jobs rather than acting and dressing up and dancing about. But yeah,
does that help your confidence?
More
pressure?
I think so. I think I just have to feel like get out there more and do more stuff and just go. You know, I can't survive on which was or 2 week. I can't even remember it, but it just wasn't enough to live on nor have fun. So it's more of a drive to pursue.
I mean, Wayne, you know, unemployment has been an issue in Swindon for quite a long time, and it is one of those areas that has struggled. I mean, how easy do you think it is to get a job, to keep a job there?
I think it's very difficult, to be honest. I think most of the jobs are unskilled, low pay, and when they do come up, the competition for those jobs is fierce. You've probably got next to no chance at all. And then if you are lucky enough to get one of those sort of jobs, just to try and keep your head above water, you know, you go out and you work as many hours as you can, but then you're struggling to keep your head above water, to pay for you know, ever increasing energy bills, rents. You know, I'm not in a private sector rental of property, but I pity those that are, because the rents are just extortionate, and even for 2 people in full-time work, I think you'd struggle. You know, so for a single person, it's horrendous.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because this government talk a good deal about striking the right balance between those in work, hard-working families, for example, and they're transforming the welfare landscape because they say they want to make it fairer for those people in work. But do you think they have any understanding of how you can still be in work, but you can still struggle? Do you think they understand that?
No, I don't think they understand that, because the rhetoric coming from government ministers is it's a divide and rule. You know, it's Sherpas and I think it's a disgrace on society in this day and age that people who go out to work still have to have their pay topped up through benefits just to survive. I think it's outrageous in 2013 that people are not paid a decent wage so that they can afford to live, not even comfortably, but just survive. You know, the whole point of going out to work is so that you don't struggle. It's to get you out of poverty. It's to make life better for you. But for millions of people that are in work, that isn't the case at all. They're still struggling.
I mean, Mick, you said that you'd like to pay your staff better wages. Do you recognise that story of people who are in work but still struggling?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my employees is in rented accommodation, and he's only recently said he can't get a mortgage. He does live on his own, but he can't get a mortgage because of the wage that I'm paying him. I think he should have more money, but obviously my business has to survive, otherwise he'd be obviously out of work. So we do need to, and I have recognised this with one of the staff, and I needed to keep him. So yes, I've given him more money, and I would like to increase the other lad's money. But it's all about having enough employees, and I need more employees. and that's where I need support. I need support from the bank. If I had support from the bank, I would definitely take on another member of staff, because this business needs it.
Are you surprised that there is this problem with the banks and borrowing, given that there has been a lot of talk about getting businesses going? Are you surprised it seems to not be filtering through, as you put it, not cascading down to businesses like yours?
I'm not surprised. I don't know how long it's going to take for this country to get back on its feet, and I do understand as a country we do seem to survive. We do seem to get ourselves out of problems like this. We've seen other countries obviously fail quite badly, but I think as a general whole, as a country, we will survive. But I don't see light at the end of the tunnel. I don't see anything getting better certainly in the short term. In fact, not even the long term. I think it's going to be a difficult time. I haven't heard any bank telling me that they can assist us with finances, and we all have to prove ourselves as a business and prove that the business will stand up to being given loans. It's not that I want to borrow money. I don't want to borrow money. That wouldn't really be what I wanted. I just need support, and I would take on more staff. And having seen so many motorcycle businesses, especially, and other businesses in Darlington and Middlesbrough go down, and I think mainly that is because of lack of funds for the businesses. And we've got to realise that if a business does well, it'll take on more staff. More staff means less people unemployed. And I appreciate everybody wants a good wage. I just think at the moment we need to get people back into employment and take it from there. Once the business starts doing well, once the country starts to do well, then hopefully that just has a follow-on effect.
Sinead, do you share that sort of rather bleak vision of how long it will take for the country to truly get back on its feet again?
Well, I think here at Fowey we're lucky enough to have quite a thriving high street, but Cornwall traditionally recovers from a recession far longer than other parts of the country, possibly in the same areas as Teesside and Swindon, and because it's so incredibly seasonal. And the problem is that many young people leave, and they often don't come back. So we don't have a kind of pool of young people who are working in the sector in Cornwall in general. But again, I think the government just haven't stood up to the banks at all. David Cameron said he would take action. He hasn't. And businesses are being forced to close every day because they're not getting long-term support from the high street banks. And I think it's an absolute disgrace.
You talk about a sort of brain drain, if you like, young people going away and not coming back. One of the issues that we touched on when we were in Fowey and the surrounding area was this idea of, who are getting the jobs. And there is a discussion that is also had in other parts of the country about, local British young people either don't want the work or aren't skilled to do the work. And then there's the criticism of, it goes to people coming in from outside, it goes to foreigners. I mean, what's your assessment of how it works down in Cornwall?
Well, I think we've been incredibly lucky. We have many Eastern Europeans working here, and we have many young British people working in the service sector, and that hasn't necessarily been a problem. I think the problem is that despite having many independent shops in Fowey, it's very difficult for young people here to know exactly have a future here. But I certainly don't necessarily think there's a problem with Eastern Europeans coming into the county, taking our jobs, as it were. There are enough jobs in the summer in the service industry, but it's the winter when the second home owners aren't there. And again, we have 30,000 second homes in Cornwall, which are left empty in the winter, which is crippling to small towns. I think that's the real problem. I mean, here at Love Fowey, we are trying to get people to come and visit Cornwall in the winter months, and it's not just for summer.
And in terms of, one of the recurring features that people have talked about all the time is this business of high streets where shops are closing or they're full of charity shops. I mean, when you get to the winter and the homes are empty and a lot of the shops are closing, does that affect, in a sense, the mood and the quality of your own life in terms of how you feel about living there?
Well, I think a lot of people like it when there aren't any visitors, but then I think a lot of people find it a very bleak and depressing place because it's incredibly empty. You walk down the street, there's no lights on in any of the houses. It feels like a ghost town, particularly in January and February. So, you know, again, I do think there could be more done to tackle the issue of second homes. I think that we just have to make sure that we have more shops opening and more businesses that are going to be open all year round, and really trying to invest more in those kind of businesses in the area.
You know, Mick, we did our programme when we came from underneath that fantastic transporter bridge, and of course that was built as a symbol of steely resolve, supposedly. I mean, one of the things, it's an utter cliche, but I'm afraid, in my experience, is very, very true, and I come to Liverpool quite a lot. People are so unrelentingly cheerful. You know, given really tough times. Where does that come from?
I don't know, really, to be honest. I think it's a northeast resolve that they'll be cheerful no matter what. And I think that it's certainly what I've found in the past. Everybody knows what the Geordie is like, taking further up the north, but we've always had that resolve. We've always in the past had we've had the steel industry, we've had other things big in the country, the coal miners in the area, and that's a very bitter situation. And I'm sure it's still in some of the pit areas is still quite vibrant, and they are upset that they were kind of, and certainly were, let down in the past. And I think that feeling is probably still here. It's finding a new business that the Northeast could be known for. I mean, we've obviously got Nissan nearby, which certainly has given the area some resolve. But I still feel that, and including my daughters, in fact, left the area looking for employment, for the employment that they wanted.
But also, I mean, I say I've been up to this region many, many times over the last 10, 15 years, and there's always great comedy to be had, even out of the bleakest situations.
Yeah, we've probably always been good at taking a joke out of ourselves, because that's one thing I think everybody around here seems to understand, that if things are bad, then just make a joke out of it. Yes, we will stand up against the government if they're not doing things right, and we will stand up in our numbers, but you've still got to enjoy yourself. And as I said about my business, it is motorcycle based, and therefore people will never give up on their hobbies. And if the hobby means to go out and spend money they may not have, then I've found, certainly when we've got customers coming to our farm, that they still come in their numbers, and they will still buy, and they will try and cut back in other ways.
Matthew, can you make comedy out of misery?
Yeah, I think that's what Scottish people do so well, is we just take the mickey out of how kind of tougher times, how bad the weather is, money problems and stuff like that. So yeah, most of the self-deprecating humour is very good, especially if people can relate to it in Scotland, and they can kind of enjoy that. And I do a character in Spanish, so I can therefore talk about the kind of bleak situations in Scotland as an outsider's perspective. But yeah, I think you've got to be able to laugh at these kind of hard times, and allow people to relate to that.
And do you think that that makes good comedy precisely because it does relate to people's real lives? I mean, is that important? Or?
Yeah, I think you've got to laugh at it to see that there's a better side to it, and then realise that you're certain people who are having tough times, like you're not the only person out there that other people are suffering from.
Wayne, can you tell us something cheery about Swindon? There must be something that you like.
I'm struggling now. I really am. I'm sure
it's a tough question. Have some time.
I'm sure there are lots of things, really. I'm never going to be employed by the council as a spokesman for Swindon.
Yeah, I think that job's gone. But I mean, what are people in Swindon like at sort of dealing with a difficult situation?
Sorry, are you talking to me?
Yeah, what are the people of Swindon like at dealing with the
I think pretty much I would echo what's already been said, in that you just have to still, it doesn't matter how bad things get, you still have to have a laugh, you have to joke about it, because at the end of the day, what else can you do? If you can't laugh and joke about it, that's the only thing that keeps you going, really.
So do you laugh quite a lot then? You find Swindon
It's hard to imagine, but yeah,
really?
I try to.
And I mean, in terms of looking to the future and seeing where the optimism, if there is any optimism, it's been quite a sort of bleak discussion in many ways, but where does the optimism lie for you, Sinead?
Well, good summers is one thing. More help from banks. I'd like to see councils getting tougher on empty properties. But I think for us in Cornwall, it's obviously because we're so lucky enough to have so many independent shops and businesses. I think it's definitely getting people to come on holiday here more, but also giving more support to local businesses. We have so many people starting businesses up. I know you talked about the benefit system earlier, but even something like the new enterprise allowance isn't that easy to get onto. And I think we need to make it easier for people to set up their own businesses, because if you can't be employed by someone, then you give yourself a job by setting up a business. And I think
I don't know whether it's a sign, but when I started asking you about optimism, the sound has gone quite off-piste. But Mick, can I ask the same question to you? I mean, you have looked ahead and you say, you know, there's a long haul. Is there any optimism anywhere? I mean, when you get up in the morning, what keeps you going, and what do you think will keep your business, hopefully, and your region going?
Well, I believe I have a steely determination to, first of all, to make this business work, and secondly, to be proud that from nothing really, that I can assist in a small way to build a business up. There isn't many businesses around here in what I'm doing have been too successful. We've obviously, as far as rent is concerned, the farm comes in obviously very cheap because it belongs to the family, so it cuts out those sort of costs. I wouldn't like to think that I was paying £1,000 a month or more for rent of a wholesale warehouse accommodation, because that would make it even more difficult. So I'm kind of fortunate. But no, I get up in the morning and believing in what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to achieve, and I have no intentions of giving it in, none whatsoever.
And Matthew, following your dream, at what stage do you think I'll have to give up, or do you think let's keep going?
I'm too passionate about this to give it up, even if it's going to be tough with money. It just means I'll have to sacrifice stuff. I already live on such a tight budget of very cheap rent, Tesco value, everything. And I can't treat myself to holidays or clothes. They're not the be-all and end-all, but you know, this is what I want to do too much. I have to kind of give up, even in this kind of tough times. But then that might mean having to move elsewhere, other countries or stuff like that too.
And I mean, the fact that people are still coming to watch comedy and pay £4 a time means that they're desperately in need of a laugh.
I think so, yeah. Tough times people seem to laugh. I think that's why comedy on TV has done so well, like Mathematical Approach and stuff like that, and allowing people to have lots of entertainment, because we need a laugh. And yeah, Edinburgh's still booming for the last 2 years, even with the Olympics on, and they're still coming to the city, still spending lots on drink, so it's yeah, people do need a laugh.
We're going to wrap up now, but I'm afraid I'm coming back to you, Wayne, for one last beautiful thought about Swindon. Because we'll only get complaints.
You know, I think Swindon does have a lot to offer, really, but it just needs some fresh ideas, some enthusiasm, and a bit of tender loving care, really. You know, it's not a bad place, but it's just been left sort of, I don't know, it feels like it's dying a slow death, and I just wish I could give somebody a kick up the backside to do something with the place.
I think you've just talked yourself into a job at Tourist Information. Wayne, Sinead, Mick, and Matthew here, and everybody out there, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.